there everyone. Welcome to Gray Ghost Gardening. My name is Scott, and today I'm going to share with you how to grow carrots in containers. Really simple, really quick, a project that even a novice gardener could take on, and you don't need a lot of space. You just need a few basic materials, and you need sunlight, and you should be able to produce a great harvest of fresh carrots. So let's get started. Let's go through what I have here and what we're going to do with all of this. So containers that I'm going to use, 5-gallon buckets. These happen to come from Lowe's. I have no association with Lowe's. It just happened to be I had some extra buckets in the garage, and so they're about to get cannibalized for carrots. I have some vermiculite. You can also use perlite. This will help keep the soil fluffy, is the word that I like to use. Very open, very loose, and really allow the root to grow down deep into the soil. I've got a little bit of organic compost. I have potting mix. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. Again, I have whatever, I think this was the cheapest one that I found today at the big box store. But potting mix, you don't want garden soil. Garden soil might be too dense and too heavy, all right? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix these roughly in thirds, about a third of the vermiculite, about a third of the organic compost, and about a third of the potting mix. Put them into my container, put the carrot seed in there, and basically forget about it. So let's get started with a couple of things that we have to do with the containers so that they'll work for us. So one of the things we have to be able to do when we're growing in containers, we have to be sure that the soil will drain. We can't just leave it a bucket as a bucket, or a bin as a bin, or whatever container you're going to use. And look, you can use anything. It needs to be at least 18 inches deep, and probably at least, a foot, 10 inches to a foot across. I've seen people use the storage tubs, storage containers. I've seen people use pots. You can do this in pots. I like this because it's got a handle, makes it easy to move, especially early. We are right at the very beginning of February. I'm probably a few days late. I live in zone 9A, fairly close to the coast. I'm in Southeast Texas, in Cypress. And we just had a really good hard freeze. And so to be able to pick these containers up and move them, we'll probably get freezing weather again. Carrots are pretty hardy and can actually take pretty cold weather, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So what we do have to do is put some drainage in here, and for that, a drill, 1/2-inch drill bit, put some holes in here, and off we go to the races. So I put 6 holes in there. I have seen people with a smaller bit put it in the side at the bottom so that it doesn't drain as quickly. Our problem here in Southeast Texas is that we get warm fast, and if things hold water, we're going to get stuff growing in there that we don't want. Mold and fungus and things like that are going to take over, and so I tend to maybe be a little bit more aggressive with the drainage holes. Personal preference. Like I said, I've seen people put holes in the side and produce incredible results. I'm going to finish. You don't need to watch me drill holes. That's not exciting. I'm going to finish the rest of my containers, and then we'll get back to how we're going to do the mix. All right, so what I've got here, I've got a big tub that I use for my potatoes. I've got an extra tub that I don't have potatoes in right now. And so I'm going to kind of put roughly equal parts of, again, potting mix. And I'm going to go a little bit heavier actually with the potting mix than I will with the organic material and the vermiculite, just because the potting mix is already, you know, very crumbly, which is again what you really want. And so nothing fancy. All we're doing is putting it in here. The one thing you want to really avoid and kind of look for, and so far I haven't found, as I feel this, I don't feel anything too significant, but like here, and this isn't too bad, but this is just a piece of, you know, rotting wood. But this, as that carrot is growing down and the carrot hits something more solid in the soil, it's either going to stunt the growth or it's going to cause the carrot to split. Now, it'll still eat the same, but it won't look as pretty. So again, this is a little bit of organic material that I'm putting in, and I'm really trying to kind of feel as I put it in. Some people I've actually seen sift their soil, and I'm not going to go to that extent. I think for our purposes, or for my purpose anyways, here where I am, that's not going to be necessary. But one of the reasons that people have a hard time when they are growing in the ground, there's rocks, there's sticks, there's other material that causes the the carrot to it hits it, basically the root as it's going down, and creates problems. So this way, by growing in containers, I'm able to better control the soil and the environment then that it's going to be growing in, and better conditions, better harvest, better yield, all of that. Okay, so I've got close to enough to fill up my first container. And again, all I'm going to do is get in here with this and really mix it up and break it up and make sure that it is thoroughly mixed, and I'm feeling for clumps, and if I come across something hard like that, I'm tossing it out in the grass here. You're not going to get all of it. Like I said, I've actually have seen people and know people who will sift their soil, and they produce some just phenomenal harvests of absolutely gorgeous carrots. I don't do this to win a beauty contest. Everybody likes to have good looking produce when they're done. For me, it's about eating it and enjoying the harvest in that fashion. And the other thing that I'm doing here is I'm really making sure the the organic matter that I had was pretty wet. Clearly it had been outside. We had like I said, we had a real good freeze, and we had quite a bit of precipitation with it. And so it's a little bit wet, and I wanted to make sure that I break it all up so that it doesn't clump and that I get it all incorporated really well here into this soil. So, you know, what you see here now is really loose, but there's another big piece. Just toss it out and no worries, right? But you can see how fluffy this actually is. And this is the namesake of my garden right here. This is Cosmo the Wonder Pup. He's a Weimaraner, hence the name Gray Ghost Gardens. So I'll try to get him to make a more staged appearance versus just running in and running out of the camera. And again, here's another kind of bigger piece that I've pulled out of there and I'm tossing out. The one other thing that I'm going to amend into the soil, or amend the soil with, is a little bit of bone meal. Again, brand doesn't matter, just bone meal. But when you look here, right, what you see is that the nitrogen, right, you've always got these 3 numbers on any kind of fertilizer. Then the first number is nitrogen, the second number is phosphate, and the third number is calcium. And so for any root vegetable, I'm not a horticulturist, but the way I understand it, you want low nitrogen. High levels of nitrogen in the soil for a root vegetable will make the tops grow real big and pretty, but it doesn't promote root growth. Whereas the middle number, the higher it is, the better you're going to end up with root production. And right, carrot, potatoes, beets, radishes, any of that kind of stuff, ultimately that's what we're looking for, is that root. So let me get this open and get a little bit of this. So this is just bone meal, all right, and this is a really powdered version of it, and I'm just sprinkling. It's not even a handful. You can see what I've got here. This is maybe a quarter of a cup, and that's probably ambitious in terms of a measurement. So I'm going to mix this all up again, try to make sure that that's all incorporated in there really, really well. And people have asked, you know, what do I do with the soil when I'm done? You know, so when I harvest these carrots, what am I going to do with the soil? Well, I'll reclaim the soil. I've got a big bin in the back of my yard, and I will reclaim the soil and amend it again, and either then use it in my yard, use it in other beds, use it in my raised garden. So it's not going to be wasted. So anyways, you can see here my holes on the bottom. Container is ready to go. I'm going to load up the container, my 5-gallon bucket, and then we'll take a look at the seeds and see what's going on there with them. All right, so I've got my container filled up almost to the top, right, with my soil mixture, my medium, my growing medium here. And you don't have to do this. I just kind of gently flatten it. It's not a requirement by any stretch of the imagination. And so let's see here, I've got some different carrot seeds. I've got a rainbow mix, so we'll do that first. carrot seeds are really small. They take a long time to germinate, and so you got to be patient. If you're doing this for the very first time, you may think, oh, this was a disaster. They didn't germinate, nothing is growing, I'm never doing this again, this was a complete waste of time. Just be patient. You got to keep the soil moist, and like I said, it's going to probably take 2 weeks. I know you won't be able to see these, but you can see how small and light these are. Now, I've seen people make a grid, I've seen people put them in rows or in concentric circles. I don't do that. The seeds are cheap, and so all I do is sprinkle them and distribute them across the top, knowing that I am going to have to thin them. And when I do thin them, I'll use snips, little scissors, and thin them that way by clipping them off at the where the soil is, right where it's coming out of the soil, and that will stop that germinated seed from that plant from continuing to grow. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cover just very, I've got just a tiny little bit of material, potting material here in my tub. I'm going to barely cover these. I'm going to water it in, I'm going to label it, and it's ready to go. So like I said, it's, you know, where I live down here on the Gulf, basically the Gulf Coast. You know, I'm in, like I said, I think 9A is this growing zone that I'm in, and we're about a week out from our, maybe a little longer, 10 days from our last freeze date. It seems like we always get a late freeze somewhere, but I should be able to take care of everything that I've got growing already in containers, and I can move it quickly into the garage or anything like that. The last thing that I want to say about this before I stop for today, couple of things. One, you know, again, this is super easy. If you're limited with space, limited with time, wanting to try to do something, just get your hands a little dirty, and something that, you know, you can say you grew this, and then you were able to eat it and consume it. To me, there's just something really holistic about that, and I don't know, for me anyways, it really resonates. I wish everybody had the time and the desire to do this. I think we would be healthier. I think we would live better lives. I think it's good for our souls to get our hands into the dirt a little bit. So I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to finish my other containers, and then I'll show you what I've got at the end as I water them in. When I said I was just going to lightly cover, usually carrot seeds only need to be buried about 1/4 of an inch. So I mean, just ever so lightly am I putting a little bit more of this soil that I've mixed up here on top. And now, there's one last handful, so hate to leave anybody out. All right, there we go. So now this one is good to go. Just gently make sure everything's covered, and I'm going to finish the rest of them, and then we'll be back. Okay, so to recap real quick before I have to go make supper, we've got carrots that I have sown here in 5-gallon buckets. Those are what I'm using for my container containers for the carrots this spring. You could use any kind of container you wanted. Storage containers, pots, like what you see here that my little lemon tree is in. You know, the magic is that it has to be probably at least 18 inches deep, and you need to provide good drainage, and you need a really loose, fluffy soil. You don't want to use garden soil if you're going to do this in containers. You want to use potting soil. I have vermiculite in there. You could also use perlite. And then I put some compost in there, and then I added bone meal, something that's high in phosphorus. You're going to need to keep these nice and moist during the germination period, which, you know, could be 14 days or so, give or take. And then you're just going to have to watch it and make sure that they don't dry out. Once they do sprout, I will have to thin them because I put a lot of seeds down trying to guarantee germination. And that's no big deal to come in with a little pair of scissors or shears and to trim the buckets, the containers. I've got 2 more containers that I'm going to do tomorrow, but like I said, it's getting late. I've been called to dinner, and I will be doing some updates on this as the growing season progresses. So again, you know, you can make this as sophisticated or as simple as you want, and this video is really about keeping it simple. This video is really about trying to help a novice or beginner gardener you know, develop a level of comfort, a little bit of understanding and realization that this is something that anyone can do. So thanks for joining me this afternoon, and if you found this useful, if you found it beneficial, I would appreciate it if you'd hit the like button, maybe even consider subscribing. I plan to do a whole series of container gardening videos with different vegetables and different things to look at. And from the Gray Ghost Garden, let's see if he'll turn around and look. There is the namesake. There's Cosmo the Wonder Pup. Normally he doesn't sit still that long. Anyways, y'all have a great day, and I hope to see you again.